Amazing truth exposed. The missing heiress of the castle and her unexpected connection to the secrets of broken pines. The rain pummeled the library's roof as Sarah sat amidst a fortress of dusty archives, shadows dancing just out of reach. An unyielding discontent clung to her, as sharp as the paper cuts from the fragile pages that held the town's forgotten history. Budget cuts threatened her beloved haven, and she felt like a ghost in a place that had once been a sanctuary. Each whispered resignation from patrons echoed her own sinking heart. The library was her life's work, yet it was crumbling much like the castle perching above the town, twisted in vines and stories left untold. With her mother's increasing dependency gnawing at her daily, Sarah's desk was cluttered with both overdue books and overdue responsibilities. How could she provide for her mother when the library could barely provide for itself? A deep-seated doubt knotted in her stomach. Was it her? She glanced at the shelves, dimly aware that her siblings had soared to academic heights, leaving her in the shadows of their accolades. Stumbling upon the tattered journal felt like fate intervening. Yet what did she even deserve in this moment of desperation? It lay there waiting, filled with the traces of a life once lived, and as she opened the yellowed pages, hope flickered. The tales she had grown up hearing were not mere fabrications. They held intimate connections, threads leading back to her grandmother, the missing heiress shunned by the town. Her heart quickened. Was this discovery her salvation, or a curse tethered to unresolved family frailties? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications, so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As Sarah dove deeper, words morphed into visceral echoes, revealing secrets of wealth and power, while simultaneously laying bare the rotting core of privilege. A treasure, perhaps? But whose treasure? The townspeople were weary of the past, clutching tight to their perceived patriarchy, and she had to question whether mining this legacy would elicit shouts of triumph or exclamations of dissent. Every page turned was a step into uncharted waters, digging deeper into who she was versus what the town deemed important. Yet the tension grew. Each new revelation compounded with frustration. Friends became skeptics. They now saw her as a threat to their stability. How could she honor her grandmother's memory while facing such resistance? Confronted by societal expectations and the guilt gnawing at her for potentially disrupting the fabric of a community she loved, Sarah's mind raced. Unanswered questions swirled amidst her growing anxiety. Every word penned felt like an act of rebellion. The weight of ancestral duty pressed down with unnerving intensity. Standing before the castle's decrepit gates, hope mingled with desperation. Would unearthing her grandmother's narrative grant her a new identity, or entrap her further in a battle for acceptance? All at once she craved freedom and feared rejection. Torn between blood obligations and her desire for a different life, Sarah held her breath amidst the steady drizzle, the world narrowing around her. Would she reclaim a legacy, or awaken a firestorm of resentment? As shadows lengthened, the secrets of the castle held her captive, whispering unseen truths that gnawed at her soul. It was now a battle for self, unraveling more than just the past, but redefining her place in a future that hung precariously in the balance. As the rain lingered, drumming against the castle's ancient stones, Sarah stepped forward with hesitant resolve. Each footfall stirred memories similar to the stories lurking in the pages of her grandmother's journal. The castle, shrouded in mist, mirrored her own uncertainties, an edifice of mysteries yet to be unearthed. Her heart raced, fueled by equal parts anticipation and trepidation. This was not merely a quest for family history. It was a confrontation with her identity, a desperate search for her place within a narrative she felt powerless to shape. The castle loomed above her, its grandeur intertwined with remnants of loss. As she observed its once imposing facade now engulfed in decay, Sarah began connecting the dots. The journal hinted at hidden chambers, passageways that led not just into the heart of the castle, but into the very depths of understanding her lineage. What if these secrets offered her a way to reclaim the narrative, to build her own significance instead of merely inheriting someone else's shadow? Drawing a deep breath, she reached for the crumbling stone wall, as if its textures could deliver answers no printed page could. Flickers of memories invaded her, stories shared at family gatherings, whispers among relatives about the heiress who abandoned their plight. They regarded her with disdain for daring to escape. Would they not understand if Sarah chose to explore these legacies? Would pursuing her grandmother's truth be seen as noble exploration, or an inexorable betrayal? A sudden gust of wind sent shivers down her spine, triggering a visceral realization. She was tethered to this place, its glory, and its shame. There was empowerment in understanding the scars that marked her family's history. With newfound determination, she recalled the snippets of detective work she utilized to defend the library against budget cuts. If she could fight to preserve a sanctuary for knowledge, perhaps she could also illuminate the complexities of her lineage. Fueled by this revelation, Sarah retraced her steps to the library, driven by purpose. The journal accompanied her, a faithful guidebook through the uncharted terrains of her ancestry. Sitting at her familiar desk cluttered with overdues, she flipped to pages filled with her grandmother's elegant script. The handwritten passages awoke a deep-seated need to combine emotional healing with community engagement, a vision for the library that transcended the immediate crisis. As she dived deeper into the journal's inverted truths, financial disputes, correspondences with estranged family, and coded messages about hidden treasures, Sarah began crafting a plan. She would organize a series of sessions inviting townsfolk to share their own family stories, intertwined with the legacy of the castle. A personal endeavor sprouted, to turn this chaotic inheritance into collective knowledge and discovery. Perhaps within these connections, the townspeople would see her not as a usurper, but a messenger, one relaying truths buried by time. Each shared story could reforge common threads, igniting a reinvigorated communal lineage. Yet, within this compelling vision, simmered the unease of backlash. How would those resistant to change respond to her intentions? The line drawn between honoring her past and risking alienation from her community began to blur. Determined, Sarah returned to the castle's gates, a symbol of her burgeoning courage. The echoes of her grandmother's life elongated in her mind. Every step toward confrontation with the past ignited uncertainty about tomorrow. As she stood in the shadow of the castle, a vivid realization washed over her. This journey to unveil her lineage was not only about her grandmother, but also about finding her voice in a world structured by silence. She aimed to stir the echoes, yet she feared that in doing so, she might awaken demons long left undisturbed. The decision loomed, a chance to rewrite her family's narrative. But could she bear the weight of its consequences? The moment had come. Would she step through the gates of resentment, or would she restore faith in her heritage? The coruscating light of dawn filtered through the heavy mist, casting the ancient stones of the castle in a pale golden hue. Sarah stood before its grand entrance, heart pounding with both exhilaration and fear. The moments before her next steps felt elongated, fraught with possibilities and consequences. Each breath lingered with the taste of uncertainty, but it was too late to turn back now. As she crossed the threshold, the musty air enveloped her, rich with history, yet void of warmth. Dust motes danced through the sunlight that trickled in from fractured windows, illuminating fragments of the past. Sarah's instinct as a librarian kicked in. This was a manuscript of time waiting to be decoded, a labyrinth of stories and secrets waiting for her exploration. Her hand grazed the cold stone walls, conjuring images of those who had walked here before her. The characters in her grandmother's journal whispering through the generations. She willed herself to think beyond her immediate fears, challenging the narrative forged by others and slowly stitching her own voice into the fabric of this legacy. With each step, she internalized the scattered ideas she had penned on the library's whiteboard late into the night. Community sessions where residents could piece together their own narratives. The opportunity to create a living history emerged as a potent antidote to reclaim her self-worth. But now, standing in the castle's oppressive silence, another question loomed larger than before. Would her exploration empower or isolate her? As she moved deeper into the castle, she committed to active observation. Every room was not merely a setting but a canvas painted with the lessons of the past, and each fragment she encountered felt like a puzzle piece revealing the shape of her ancestral identity. Upturned furniture, faded portraits, remnants of banquets long forgotten. All this evoked an acute sense of empathy for those once trapped within these stone walls. In a dim corner, a peculiar door caught her attention, half ajar as if beckoning her curiosity. Heart racing, she pushed it open and stumbled upon a small, dust-laden library that seemed untouched by time. The air was thick with secrets, and the shelves burst with forgotten tomes and yellowing letters. Here, among these remnants, lay the foundations of both the castle's story and her own. She swiftly reached for a large ledger nestled between the books. Its binding cracked as she opened it, revealing a meticulous record of family accounts, detailing past disputes and triumphs. As she rifled through the pages, a familiar name leaped out, her grandmother's maiden name, next to entries of secrecy and tension. This wasn't merely about sharing stories anymore. It was about facing the shadows that had darkened their lineage. Was it possible that her grandmother's reticence stemmed from more than choice? A contextual fallout with repercussions still resonating within Sarah's very existence? A chill swept through her as she realized she had stumbled upon something more significant than a connection. It might be the key to disrupting intergenerational silence. And yet, with this power came an unsettling weight. How could she unveil these truths without igniting old wounds? Would the townsfolk view her dedication as idealistic or disdainful, declaring her a traitor to the memory of their ancestors? Resolved to follow this thread, Sarah accumulated the dispersed pieces of her family's fabric. The ledger would serve as a catalyst for her sessions, encouraging a dialogue rooted in authenticity, even if it risked exposing unpalatable truths. She withdrew from the castle with renewed purpose, every weighing doubt morphing into determination. It wasn't merely about reclaiming her grandmother's narrative. It was about weaving her own truth into it, boldly facing the past instead of shying away. Arriving back at the library, she was met with her growing exhilaration. Yet as she sat down at her once comfortable desk, the magnitude of her undertaking seeped in. This was not simply her journey. It had implications for everyone intertwined with her lineage. Just as she settled into a plan of how to address these stories, her phone buzzed, displaying an unknown number. A sense of foreboding gripped her as she answered. "Sarah, you don't know me, but you need to hear this." And with those words, the world she was meticulously crafting spun dangerously close to unraveling. Her heart raced as adrenaline coursed through her veins in response to the mysterious voice at the other end of the call. Intrigued yet apprehensive, Sarah leaned closer to the screen, her breathing shallow as she searched for answers hidden in those few spoken words. "What do you mean?" she managed, every syllable steeped in urgency. The weight of the ledger pressed against the desk, almost echoing the gravity of her unfolding journey. "Your grandmother. There's more to her story than what's been passed down," the voice continued, muffled and static-laden. "If you want to know the truth, meet me at the old well behind the castle tonight. There's something you must see." The line went dead, and Sarah was left clutching the phone, a cocktail of fear and curiosity swirling within her. The implication of a deeper narrative sent her mind spiraling into a maelstrom of questions. Had her grandmother concealed family secrets? What role had she played in the larger story of the castle that Sarah had just begun to uncover? It was a pivotal moment, an intersection of her past and the undiscovered future she sought to create. She couldn't ignore the call despite the foreboding it invoked. The opportunity to confront the unknown could provide answers she hadn't even thought to seek. However, back in the safety of the library, doubt climbed to the surface. Should she trust this unknown person? What if they were leading her to a dead end or worse, another labyrinth of secrets? She paced the wooden floor, contemplating her next move. The assignments she'd laid out for her community sessions danced mockingly in her mind, bearing the weight of their expectation. Could she risk exposing herself if the truth turned out to be more than she could bear? With a sudden surge of resolve, she settled into her chair and opened the ledger again, determined to arm herself with the knowledge it contained. Each account within those pages became not just history, but a map directing her next steps. She would go to the well. She would confront whatever shadow loomed there. It wasn't just about reclaiming family history. It was about transforming that history into a living testament of her own strength and courage. As she pored over the documents, one entry caught her attention. a name she had never seen before but felt oddly familiar, woven into scandals of inheritance disputes. The entries dripped with familial tension, glimpses into lives lived under the watchful gaze of the castle's walls. Sarah's instincts screamed at her, connecting dots that crawled into the recesses of her mind. Was it possible she wasn't just reclaiming a narrative, but was also implicated within it? The determination solidified in her bones. She would have to confront the legacy that wasn't just hers, but seemed to stem from a larger, tangled web. Night fell like an omen, and with it, Sarah donned her coat and retrieved a flashlight, her heart heavy with anticipation. The shadows of the castle loomed larger as she made her way towards the well. Each step resonated with both dread and exhilaration, a visceral acknowledgement that, in unveiling the truths behind the walls, she stood in harm's way of a family secret that could alter her destiny. As she reached the wooden structure of the well, a figure loomed out of the darkness. Tension held her breath captive as she took a deep one, summoning the courage that had started to define her journey. "Are you ready?" the figure asked, the question cutting through the silence like a knife. Before she could respond, the night echoed with looms of history, waiting to collide with the present, preparing for a revelation that would lead her even further down this treacherous path. What lay ahead threatened to disrupt not just her understanding of her lineage, but the course of her very future. Sarah's eyes adjusted to the dim light, and she could make out the figure before her. The silhouette was tall, cloaked in darkness, and she felt an instinctive wariness wash over her. Were they an ally, or a harbinger of something unfathomable? She swallowed hard, fighting against the tide of uncertainty that threatened to engulf her. "I'm ready," she finally replied, her voice steadied by a newfound determination. The figure stepped closer, revealing a face that was both familiar and foreign, like a puzzle piece she hadn't expected to find. "I'm Daniel," they introduced, their voice smooth yet laced with urgency. "We have much to discuss. Your grandmother's legacy is not just hers. It belongs to many. If you're to reclaim it, you need to understand everything." The weight of Daniel's words settled heavily in the air, each syllable loaded with meaning Sarah had yet to grasp. The ledger in her possession felt like a ticking clock. It held the potential for understanding, but also for exposing painful truths. She gestured toward the well, unwilling to yield the ground she had already claimed. "Let's start with what you know," Sarah insisted, the faint tremor in her voice giving way to resolve. The timeline of her family history swirled in her mind, a narrative long erased, yet pulsing with vitality at her fingertips. What had her grandmother hidden, and why had it been deemed unworthy of sharing? Daniel began to relate a tale threaded with whispers and concealed truths, a story of her grandmother, a secretive heiress entangled in a web of deceit that had cost her dearly. According to him, her grandmother had been embroiled in a bitter opposition against powerful factions within their lineage, factions that had come for her inheritance with relentless fervor. The implications of his words sunk deep. Sarah felt an unsettling intertwining of identity and legacy forming in her mind. She had always thought of her grandmother as a figure of stability and comfort, but now she discovered a tumultuous life characterized by battles and sacrifices. What strength had been required to protect her family's secrets? What depths of courage had remained hidden from the world? "Do you understand the implications?" Daniel's tone intensified, capturing her gaze. "Your grandmother's decisions shaped many lives, including your own. This legacy can either confine you or empower you. It's your choice." The gravity of responsibility washed over her, mingling with the anxiety that had besieged her moments prior. Could she confront not only her family's unsettling past, but also her own identity within it? The ledger had not just been an archive of history, it was a call to change her narrative. The resolve that ignited within her fueled a surge of questions. "Why did you come to me?" Daniel paused for a heartbeat, revealing a flicker of vulnerability before launching into a fervent explanation. "Because the true essence of your family history rests with you. I believed that you were the one who could break this cycle." The dawning realization struck. If she chose to embrace her legacy, it meant delving into uncertainties, facing the echoes of anger and manipulation that once haunted her grandmother. Could she transform an inherited burden into a source of strength? As these thoughts cascaded through her mind, a distant rumble echoed, disrupting the stillness of the night. drawing her attention back to the well. "Now we must decide what comes next," Daniel urged, his tone urging caution and excitement in equal measure. "The truth awaits below, but it's not simply about unveiling past horrors. It's about reclaiming your autonomy from the shadows." Sarah felt an inner shift, excitement mingled with trepidation. She stood at the cusp of a decision that would redefine her path. Could understanding her grandmother's struggles forge new terrain in her own identity, an intricate dance with the past toward a more empowered future? "Are you prepared for what's next?" Daniel's voice resonated in the stillness, echoing in her chest. Before she could answer, the tremors of a deeper revelation quaked beneath her. The well-held secrets not only of her grandmother, but of her entire family, waiting for her to dredge up and face the truth head-on. With her heart pounding, Sarah leaned towards the well, ready to confront the legacy that loomed beneath the surface, aware that each revelation could turn the tide of her future in ways she had never anticipated. "Let's begin," she whispered, the words mingling with the cold air, laden with promise and uncertainty, ready to plunge into the depths of her family's hidden past. What awaited her below? Would the truth liberate or condemn? The well loomed before Sarah, a gaping mouth inviting her to descend into the darkness. The air around her thickened, charged with the weight of her mounting apprehensions. What lay beneath the surface could unravel not only her grandmother's story, but also redefine her own. "You need to understand that the truth down there is multifaceted," Daniel warned, his eyes mirroring her doubts. "Some parts will illuminate, while others will sting." The gravity of his words resonated within her. A battle raged inside her mind. Could she navigate through the pain, or would it swallow her whole? As she stared into the abyss, Sarah recalled her grandmother's serene laughter, the comforting warmth of family dinners, where buried secrets crept into the corners of the room, but were never acknowledged. Was it possible that the woman she idolized had concealed her strengths behind layers of deception and conflict? "Let's go," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. She grasped the ledger tightly, a palpable connection to her lineage, a personal anchor in an ocean of familial chaos. Daniel led the way to the well's edge, extending a hand to help her down, only to pull back suddenly, as if sensing her hesitation. "You must trust yourself more than anyone else in this moment," he urged, his brow furrowed with concern. Gathering her courage, Sarah positioned herself at the edge and placed her hand on the rough stone. A chill slid through her fingertips, and an epiphany flared in her mind. Embracing her past meant confronting not just her grandmother's legacy, but her own identity. She wasn't just a passive recipient of this history. She had the power to shape its interpretation. As she carefully descended into the well's darkness, Daniel followed closely, his presence both comforting and enigmatic. The stone walls closed around them, and the surrounding air thickened, heavy with anticipation. "Think about what you're stepping into," Daniel whispered, guiding her into a narrow passageway. "This legacy involves choices, consequences, and perhaps even a reckoning." The flickering light from Daniel's lantern cast eerie shadows on the walls, revealing etchings that hinted at the past, stories that yearned to be told. Each step revealed remnants of a history tied to betrayal, loyalty, and unyielding ambition. Sarah's heartbeat quickened as fragments of her grandmother's hidden past brushed against her consciousness. Had the courage to face these stories eluded her grandmother, or had she simply chosen silence for protection? As they reached a small chamber, their space illuminated. The shelves revealed meticulously organized documents, faded photographs, and relics that resonated with the echoes of time. Sarah's breath caught as she began to sift through the items. Her fingers grazed over an envelope bearing her grandmother's scrawl, and a jolt of recognition shot through her. "This," she murmured, holding it up for Daniel to see. "This is a piece of her." Daniel nodded gravely, the weight of the moment settling between them. "Open it." The urgency in his tone urged her on, as Sarah carefully peeled back the envelope's seal. Inside, she found letters, each one a testament to her grandmother's inner struggles, the conflict with her family, and expressions of longing for a life unencumbered by inherited roles. It was raw and visceral, stories imbued with fear and resilience. As she read, revelations unfurled, illuminating her grandmother's identity that had previously been obscured by myths and half-truths. Strong, defiant, yet vulnerable, Her grandmother had penned her will to fight, not to succumb. In that moment, Sarah identified a flicker of her own strength kindling to life. An echo of courage she believed was lost. "What are you feeling right now?" Daniel asked, his gaze probing, seeking the depths of her revelation. I'm realizing she was so much more than what I thought," Sarah replied, the tremors of her voice revealing the emotional pull this discovery had on her. "She faced what I've dreaded. She carried the burden of being both an heiress and a fighter. And I've allowed myself to live small in comparison." Daniel smiled faintly. He understood the importance of this moment. "You're beginning to see how the past empowers the future. You don't need to live small anymore." With newfound determination flooding her veins, she looked around the chamber, absorbing the myriad of stories contained within. Each letter was another thread, weaving a complex tapestry of resilience, inviting her to confront her own lingering shadows head-on. "Are you ready to dig deeper?" Daniel's question echoed with a sense of urgency. In that moment, Sarah realized this journey was bigger than confronting her grandmother's secrets. It was an avenue for her self-discovery, a chance to redefine her voice amidst the echoes of her lineage. "Yes," she affirmed with certainty, ready to forge forward into the depths of her family's legacy, aware of the transformations awaiting her in the shadows. The deeper she ventured, the more she could reclaim: identity, strength, courage. As she braced herself for what lay beyond, a chilling gust of air swirled around them, carrying whispers of the past. Was it merely the wind, or was it the essence of those who had come before? "Let's find out what else lies beneath," she declared, the steady thrum of her heart her only guide as she prepared to plunge into the unknown. How far would she have to delve to uncover what had remained hidden for too long? The air thickened further as Sarah and Daniel stepped deeper into the well's recesses, the warm glow of the lantern illuminating dust motes dancing in the stale atmosphere. Each flicker of light seemed to mock the weight of the uncertainty she carried. Sarah pushed aside self-doubt, her newfound realization that her grandmother's life mirrored her own, albeit with greater ferocity and resolve, providing her with unexpected strength. "Look here," Daniel interrupted her thoughts, pointing toward a faded map affixed to the stone wall. "This may reveal even more about your grandmother's past than just the letters." Drawing closer, Sarah examined the map's contours, an intricate outline of the estate grounds intertwined with symbols denoting boundaries, perhaps secrets, that had long veiled her family's legacy. Her heart raced. The unfamiliarity of it all ignited a fierce curiosity. Did this map hold the key to unraveling the fragmented truths of her lineage? "What if this leads us to something bigger?" she questioned aloud, a hesitant spark igniting within her. Daniel's eyes shone with excitement, and he nodded. "It's likely your grandmother had reason to chart these paths. This could be a significant turning point." Caution mixed with a burning desire to discover drove her forward. Memories of her grandmother overcame her, the woman who had offered comfort and love, yet had also danced in the context of silence about their family's past. It was time, she resolved, to reclaim that lost narrative. Each layer she peeled away united her with the echoes of her heritage. As they retraced the map's intricate lines with their fingers, tracing the ancestral home, the gardens she would visit as a child, the sensation of connection intensified. The ghosts of her family, once suffocated by the weight of unspoken truth, whispered their histories through the cracks of the stone walls around her. Do you think she was hiding something? Something that warranted this secrecy? Daniel's question pierced the silence, mirroring her own inner conflict. The thought provoked an uneasy churn in her stomach. "She must have thought it was a burden to bear alone," Sarah replied, the weight of the belief ranking alongside dread. "But if that were the case, I must change that narrative. I refuse to live under that shadow." Resolute, she imagined herself forging a new path, unburdened by fear. She wasn't just a passive observer. She was an active participant in this rediscovery, redefined through her grandmother's strength. "Let's explore further," Sarah proposed, driven by the intensity of her nascent determination. They ventured down a narrow passage that branched away from the main chamber, a narrow slot that led toward unfamiliar territory. As they walked, the walls grew damp and juxtaposed her emotions against the close confines of the tunnel. Her self-doubt wrestled silently with an emerging identity that demanded to be crafted, one that was bold and unapologetic. This was more than mere investigation. It was an act of reclamation. With every slight rustle of their footsteps breaking the oppressive silence, she felt the presence of the past entwined within her, mirroring her internal conflations. Beneath it all, fear still lurked. Fear of what she might discover. Fear of confronting the truth about her grandmother's past and the inherent expectations it placed on her own future. As they reached the end of the passage, a heavy door came into view, its iron clasp sealed tight. A chilling sensation coursed through her. "What if this leads to something we're not ready for?" she whispered, glancing back at Daniel, who was resolute yet contemplative. "Or," he countered, "what if it opens a door to liberation?" Steeling herself, Sarah's hand brushed against the iron latch. She understood the weight of this decision. Her next move would not just unveil family secrets, but solidify her stance in a narrative she was determined to reshape. "Together," she urged, taking a deep breath. "Let's break this barrier." As they pulled on the door, the hinges groaned with age, echoing their collective anticipation entwined with anxiety. In that heartbeat before the door swung open, Sarah felt a rush of tumult and triumph. She was no longer just an heiress. She was becoming the architect of her identity, set to carve her course into the vast unknown. What lay beyond that door would not only challenge her fears but also usher in revelations that might transcend her grandmother's truth and reshape her own destiny. Would she be ready to confront the vestiges of her family's legacy, embedded with the whispers of agency and choice? With bated breath, they pushed the door open, ready to uncover the unimaginable. How would the revelations within fortify her sense of self? The door creaked open, revealing a dimly lit chamber. Dust particles hung in the air like suspended secrets waiting to be uncovered. Sarah stepped inside, her heart pounding in sync with the rhythmic silence that enveloped them. Each glance around the room cast an uncertain light on her thoughts, a swirling mix of dread and exhilaration. What had her grandmother hidden here? The space was cluttered with relics of a bygone era. Old furniture draped in white sheets, like ghosts unwilling to reveal their stories. A large oak desk stood in the center, its surface cluttered with stacks of papers that seemed untouched by time, the very life legacy her grandmother had meticulously guarded. "Look at this," Daniel called softly, making his way toward a cabinet, where he discovered an old journal. As he handed it to Sarah, their fingers brushed, a brief reminder of the support that had anchored her through this exploration. The cover was unassuming, yet a familiar warmth emanated from it. She knew it held pieces of her grandmother's heart within its pages. As she flipped it open, the handwritten entries leaped out, filled with anguish, hope, and cryptic references to a person Sarah had never known. There was something distinctly vulnerable yet fiercely resolute about the words. "She wrote about confronting her fears, much like you," Daniel observed, his voice tinged with admiration. "Yes, but these entries hint at something deeper." The words on the page tugged at Sarah's consciousness. Chills ran down her spine as she processed the thoughts reflected in ink. A confrontation with family betrayals, a longing for autonomy, and threads of love interwoven with pain. It was raw and profound, a testament to the struggles she had wished to erase from her own narrative. Compelled to delve deeper, she read on, tracing the ink trails with her fingers. Each revelation felt like broken chains clinking together, marking a movement away from shame that had festered in silence. Yet, as encouragement filled her, uncertainty crept in. What if the truths uncovered revealed an identity she did not want? Could confronting her grandmother's choices lead to clarity or chaos in her own? "Do you think I should keep reading?" Sarah asked, her resolve faltering as doubt began to swirl. "Whatever is in there might not only explain your grandmother's secrets, but also guide you in understanding yourself," Daniel replied, his tone steady. It was as if he could see the strength shimmering beneath her uncertainty, a characteristic she was still learning to fully embrace. With a decisive nod, she turned the pages. Each one presented a new facet of her grandmother's life, layered with revelations that paralleled and diverged from her own. It was a mirror reflecting the courage and tenacity that had pulsed through their lineage, yet also the darker elements of their shared narrative that could not be ignored. A particularly scrawled line caught her eye. I refuse to be defined by the legacies of others. Sarah's breath hitched. Those words struck her deeply, reverberating within her as if they were calling her name. It was a direct challenge, a shadow of herself she had yet to fully confront. The weight of that statement lay heavy on her chest as she realized that her grandmother had faced the same crossroads she now faced. Would she continue the dance of evasion, or stand firmly in her truth? Sarah. Daniel's voice interrupted her spiraling thoughts. It's all connected, isn't it? Trembling at the impending revelations, she understood. This journey was not just about uncovering the past, but about shaping her own future in the light of this newfound understanding. The fear that swept through her now was different. It was no longer paralyzing. It was invigorating. Yet just as clarity dawned, the rustle of footsteps echoed in the distance, jolting her from her introspection. They were not alone in the house. Her heart raced as a voice carried through the passages, a presence she hadn't anticipated. Who's there? The unexpected sound brought back swirling doubts as she exchanged a concerned glance with Daniel. The very realization of being confronted with another piece of her family's shattered history loomed ahead. Sarah, we need to find out who it is and face this together, Daniel urged. With a deep breath, she steadied herself, ready to confront whatever revelation awaited. This moment might define the legacy she chose to embrace. How would she wield her grandmother's truth in the face of unforeseen complexities? The unknown beckoned, and she could not retreat now. Turning toward the noise, she felt the weight of her choices coalesce, a forge rekindling the fire she was now determined to embody. What lay ahead was not just an encounter with the past, but a direct confrontation of the shadows and the truths waiting to be unearthed. Sarah sucked in a breath, summoning her courage as she and Daniel moved deeper into the shadows of the room, the journal still clutched in her hand. The air felt charged with unspoken stories, and the occasional creak of the house added a score of anxieties to her heartbeat. For a fleeting moment, she considered fleeing, but the drive to confront was stronger. "Let's go," she whispered, her voice trembling. With Daniel beside her, they advanced toward the staircase, where the disembodied sound seemed to echo from above. The looming darkness felt like an embodiment of everything she was beginning to face, everything contained in her grandmother's words. As they reached the top of the stairs, the uneven wooden floorboards protested beneath their feet. Sarah's grip tightened on the journal, feeling the weight of her grandmother's restless spirit within its pages. What did she hide? Who had come to disturb the veil between the past and her present? She wasn't ready to find out. But had she ever been? A figure emerged from the shadows of the hallway. The flickering light from the window illuminated a woman standing, seemingly lost in thought. Sarah's heart dropped as she recognized the familiar outline. A distant aunt she had never known. A fragment of her family she had only heard whispers of. "Aunt Clara," she ventured, half hoping she was mistaken. The woman turned, her expression revealing a mix of surprise and recognition. "Sarah, my dear," she spoke softly, a facade of warmth masking her reticence. "What are you doing here?" The question burst from Sarah's lips, an impulse triggered by a blend of curiosity and trepidation. Clara's presence ignited an array of emotions within her. It wasn't just the familial similarity. It was the confrontation of her own interpretations of family connection. "I came looking for something. Something that was taken from us." Clara's eyes darted to the journal in Sarah's hands. "Your grandmother's legacy," she added, almost as a whisper, yet it echoed with severity. Each word from Clara's mouth felt like a nail driven into Sarah's composure. The gravity of the situation deepened. Her grandmother's legacy was more complex than mere secrets or untold stories. Clara's presence threatened to undo the stability Sarah had just begun to weave together. "What do you mean, taken from us?" "The truth, dear. Our truth." Clara stepped forward, her gaze intense, radiating a fearsome energy that called for recognition. "Your grandmother shielded us all from it, and now it is your turn to decide whether to continue her legacy of silence or break the cycle." The room seemed to close in around her. Sarah's mind raced with implications. This wasn't just a family reunion. It was a moral dilemma thrust onto her. The idea of carrying forward the burden of past betrayals felt insurmountable. Who would she be if she chose to expose the pain? Would it only serve to unravel everything she'd built within her identity? Daniel shifted beside her, his eyes searching Sarah's for guidance. "You can't hide from this," he urged quietly, a steadying presence that reminded her of their pact to tackle the truths, however daunting. As Clara continued, unveiling layers of family history entwined with tales of love, loss, and betrayal, Sarah felt the boundaries of her understanding shift beneath her. Every revelation pushed her to confront not just her lineage, but the very essence of her emerging self. The journal was more than a collection of words. It was a decision point. This realization sat heavy on her chest. Refusing to be defined by legacies felt liberating, yet echoed an invitation to engage with the very narratives she had sought to evade. "I'll need time," Sarah finally said, her voice steadier than before, "to process all of this." "I'll be here," Clara replied softly, a hint of compassion emerging from the tension. As Sarah turned away, heart racing, she felt two currents battling within her: the urge to flee from familial obligations, and the undeniable pull to delve deeper into her grandmother's revelations. Each step away from the encounter forged new limits of her understanding. Every look back to Clara's knowing gaze felt like an unraveling. The stillness that had enveloped the house felt like a prelude to a hurricane. With the journal pressed firmly against her chest, Sarah realized she stood at a crossroads, one that could lead her toward either liberation or devastation. Determined, she faced Daniel. "We need to learn more about my grandmother's choices and the impact on Clara's life. There's something bigger here." "Which path do you choose?" he asked, his expression both supportive and probing. "Let's uncover everything," she affirmed, the weight of determination igniting her spirit. The next piece of the puzzle awaited. What truths lay buried behind generations of silence? Would unveiling them bring freedom or bind her further? She was walking a fine line between past and future, and the journey had only begun. Days turned into nights as Sarah and Daniel meticulously pieced together the sprawling tapestry of her family's history. Each buried secret unveiled layered complexities that echoed the dichotomies within her: strength interwoven with vulnerability, heritage bound by experience. With Clara's revelations and the journal as their guides, they delved deeper into the formidable legacy of her grandmother. Long-held misconceptions were demystified, each truth shaking the rusted chains of silence that had gripped her family for generations. As Sarah transcribed passages from the journal and the notes Clara provided, the labyrinth they navigated transformed from a daunting maze to a map of reclamation. Her confidence burgeoned with every page they turned. They were not merely revisiting a tainted past, but forging new pathways towards recognition and belonging. At the corner of each dusty manuscript, she discovered their story was not one of shame, but one richly embroidered with resilience. This narrative was hers to reclaim, not through the shadows of fear, but through the audacity of her grandmother's quest for agency. "Your grandmother had more fire in her than any of us realized," Daniel remarked one evening as they filled the library's conference room with canvases of findings. The air was thick with anticipation, an electric tension threading excitement through their conversations. She defied the expectations placed upon her and was willing to face the wrath of her own kin. "I had always viewed her as just a figure of solace in my life," Sarah replied, her voice low yet firm. "But now I see how her strength is a part of me. Each step we take illuminates the way for both of our futures. We can't turn back now." During a community gathering she organized, Sarah unveiled their collective findings to the townspeople, inviting them to share in her journey of discovery. The room buzzed with a contrasting energy, a blend of skepticism and curiosity. But as she spoke of her grandmother's courageous stance against the forces of conformity that bound their family, an unexpected shift rippled through the audience. With each story they shared, she fostered a dialogue rooted in authenticity, allowing others to explore their familial histories intertwined with hers. It was cathartic, her grandmother's legacy infused with new life as residents voiced the burdens woven into their lore. Sarah felt empowered in ways she hadn't anticipated. Standing there, she transformed from a solitary figure in a dusty library into a beacon uniting ancestral tales under a collective narrative of empowerment. The more they spoke, the more the walls of judgment fell away. They shared experiences of defiance against limiting conditions, each individual's narrative echoing her own journey towards self-discovery. Clear eyes met with hers, not of disdain, but of recognition. She had succeeded in reweaving a complex fabric once perceived as separate and alienating into a shared tapestry of understanding and rebirth. Soon after, acknowledgement of her efforts burgeoned far beyond the confines of the library. Collaborative projects focused on preserving this newfound community of stories began emerging, igniting bonds erstwhile shrouded in misunderstanding. Sarah felt the warmth of her hard work manifest into reality, her grandmother's presence thrumming through each participating voice. Then came the letter that changed everything. The local historical society recognized Sarah's dedication, inviting her to lead an initiative focused on integrating historical narratives back into the community. It was a formal acknowledgement not only of her research, but of the profound impact she left in revitalizing perceptions about the past. Seated in front of the certificate framed on her desk, Sarah marveled at her evolution. From a woman ensnared in her family's shadows, to a leader illuminating paths for others. Her self-doubt dissipated. The notion of being clutched by fear had been replaced by fierce determination. Clarity about her identity surged. In the weeks that followed, she stood taller, her confidence swelling. Clara, now a steadfast companion in the journey of uncovering their legacy, became instrumental in establishing regular community forums, extending their collective discoveries far and wide. Each event became a testimony, not just to the stories that had been suppressed, but to the shared future forged amidst empathy and understanding. Ultimately, Sarah found herself traversing paths she had once never dared to explore. Inspired by her grandmother's actualization, she connected with others who also sought to bridge their own familial divides. She became a bridge, uniting her community with the shared pursuit of understanding, transforming it into a sanctuary for expression and acceptance. With a sense of staunch fulfillment, Sarah returned to that old castle, its walls no longer mere remnants of a history debated behind closed doors, but a celebration of voices yearning for acknowledgement. The shadows that once haunted her were replaced by echoes of belonging and empowerment. She had stepped out of her grandmother's shadow and into a legacy of her own. A legacy characterized by bravery, celebration, and the courage to forge a narrative that was deepened by the past, yet firmly rooted in the present. As she stood at the castle's threshold, she felt complete. The whispers of her lineage had no hold over her. She had defined her own narrative, boldly rewriting the script born of her grandmother's strength. This was her moment, a profound celebration of personal achievement, a testament to her journey, and a legacy she would continue to grow. Now, as you reflect on this transformative tale, you need to subscribe now to our channel. This is the moment to show your support. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and ensure more stories like Sarah's reach those who need them. Comment your thoughts and theories about Sarah's journey. What did her story reveal to you? And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to witness this empowering conclusion. Remember, only true fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting our channel through these actions.